I'm Trey Bowles, and this is Fridays Are for Founders, the online forum where entrepreneurs and people can come on and ask questions and get real-time answers on issues they're facing with their business and how to think through and move forward this in the age of Corona and COVID-19. So we'll give one more minute or so for people to log on, and then we'll get started with our special co-host this week, Jamey Ice, straight out of Fort Worth. So we'll get going in the next minute or so.
Straight out of Fort Worth.
Isn't that a t-shirt?
It is. Fridays are for founders from Fort Worth.
There you go. I like that. See?
You're keeping the alliteration going.
So we'll do this, and as people are logging on, and I'll go through some of the questions that I had for you, and then hopefully people will be able to ask questions as well, and we can go from there. Maybe we'll use the whole hour, maybe we won't, but we'll just.
So Trey, are you standing right now?
I am standing.
Dude, I love it. So you're like getting the blood flow, standing up, and like. Do you stand when you work?
Do I do what?
Do you stand while you work generally?
I have a very desk and at the office, so I stand most of the time. But my desk at home is not that way. So I just pack a bunch of books on top of each other, and then I stand up.
I like it.
All right. Welcome everybody again. I am Trey Bowles, co-founder and chair of the Deck Network, and we have put together this event for the past 3 or 4 weeks called Fridays Are for Founders. And the goal is to bring in local entrepreneurs who are dealing with the COVID-19 crisis and pandemic, just like everybody else, and let them kind of address topics that we think are important and relevant to today and what we need to be doing, what you need to be doing for your businesses. So every week we have a different co-host. We come on with a different topic and give you guys the opportunity to ask real-time questions and get real-time answers from people that are in the midst of it, just like you. This week, our topic is the idea of the importance of storytelling. And we are really lucky and fortunate this week to have Jamey Ice with us from Fort Worth, 6th Avenue Homes, 6th Avenue Storytelling, and a bunch of other great things going on. So Jamey, thank you for being here with us today.
Glad to be here.
It's fun. I've known Jamey for a while. I was making a joke and some of the promotion behind this thing that we have a literal rock star on the show with us today. So
maybe recovering rock star.
There you go. That's probably more fair. But recovering rock star and emerging entrepreneur. So
yeah. So fun fact: I played music for 16 years. I played in a band called Green River Ordinance, and Trey Bowles was actually one of the first managers of Green River Ordinance. I think I was still in college at the time.
You first started when I first met you. You guys were in high school, I thought.
We were in high school.
Shows how old I am.
We go way back in the music days.
Yeah.
Trey was one of the original managers of Green River Ordinance, and so man, it's been fun to just see you sort of flourish as an entrepreneur and businessman, and just and do some really really neat things. And just what a fun like history. And here we are, like 12 years later.
I'm telling you. And now you've got some amazing things going on with your entrepreneurial endeavors. Can you do me a favor? Just kind of give I don't like to read bios on people. I think that it's like a highlight reel and it's embarrassing and people don't know what to say because they look like, they're far better than they actually are in real life. So what I want to do is let you tell the people on the call today what they need to know about you. How would you describe yourself as an entrepreneur? How you got from being a rock star to being where you are today?
That's a good question. So I always thought that I do a lot of things. I guess entrepreneur is the right word. I started a band called Green River Ordinance, which I mentioned earlier, when I was 15 years old. My little brother Jeff was 13. We played throughout high school, then we played throughout college, and then we signed a record deal with Capitol Records right out of college and toured for years. Had some radio success. Got to do a lot of fun things, and I think really like my business and entrepreneurial journey started then. So from the time I was 20 years old, 19, 20 years old, like I had a small business, and we had Green River Ordinance Touring, which is like how we made money from touring. And then we had Green River Ordinance LLC, which was the music and the publishing and the merchandise and all these things. And I think, there's a lot of, I was like the guy in the band who was passionate about marketing and growing a brand and a business. And I think like some of like our lead singer is the guy who like just full of emotion and is a great songwriter and needs to express himself. And I was never the person who like sat in a corner and wrote songs. I was the guy who was like, man, how do we grow this brand? How do we get our name out? How do we do this and that? And so off and on, I managed the band, I booked the band, we acted as a record label and released albums independently. But was always just sort of passionate about business through that. Fast forward several years later, 2011, 2012, my wife and I with some friends, we opened a restaurant in Fort Worth called Brood. Brood is a location in Fort Worth. There's a location in the Bishop Arts District of Dallas, and we have a location at DFW Airport. Around that same time, I also sort of as a side hustle started flipping houses. My wife and I bought a house, renovated it, and sold it, and started doing that, and then kind of started helping friends do that. And then my best friend from high school and I started buying houses together and flipping them in the Fairmount sort of South Side neighborhood of Fort Worth. And so we went on to buy and sell and rehab like 120 historic homes in that neighborhood. And that eventually sort of grew into a bigger company, Sixth Avenue Homes. And so Sixth Avenue Homes is a one-stop shop real estate company. One of the things that we kept finding through our flipping journey was friends and family kept calling us saying, hey, we love what you do. Can you help us? Because our real estate agent doesn't know anything about construction or old homes, or we need help, and like they don't know if this is a good investment or not. People kept calling us and asking us to help, and we were just like, we just do our own thing. We just flip houses. But the more and more people that kept calling us, we saw that there was just a need in the market for something different. One, I felt like millennials and people like me weren't being served in the market. Real estate traditionally at the time was very like suit and tie, and most of like the real estate world was here's a guy in a suit and tie in front of a mansion. And me as like a long-haired musician, I was like, I don't relate to that. And so it just felt like there was people who weren't being served, millennials. And I think the other unique thing about millennials is they put a high value on originality, and they want to express themselves and want something that's their own. And so there was no one that was doing real estate all in one, where we help you find a house and then get your own. So we launched Sixth Avenue Homes in 2016 as like a one-stop shop to help customers buy, sell, design, and renovate. We also, my wife launched a nonprofit in 2012 called The Net. So she runs that. Jimmy, who's my best friend and partner at Sixth Avenue Homes, is the president of the board of The Net. So our families launched that. And then my wife recently launched a retail line out of The Net that employs women coming out of sex trafficking called Worthy Co. We also have done some development work in Fort Worth. There's a development on South Main called the 411 that we did. That's a big event space, and that was like one of our projects and one of the things that we own and are a part of. And most recently, sort of the Sixth Avenue brand has expanded. We've done a lot of work with businesses, helping businesses find, design, and renovate real estate. And then most recently, sort of through our work of working with businesses and business owners, we have had a lot of friends say, hey, you built these brands. Can you help me build and market brands as well? And so a lot of our commercial work turned into also let's help businesses market and grow and tell their story. So the Sixth Avenue brand has expanded from just homes, residential homes, to we do Sixth Avenue Homes. We have Sixth Avenue Commercial. We have Sixth Avenue Investments, which is our own developments and own portfolio. And then we most recently launched Sixth Avenue Storytelling, which is sort of a marketing firm, if you will, based on storytelling. That's a little different from sort of the traditional ad agency model. That was a long answer. I'm sorry for talking so much.
No, I think that's that's what we want. That's why you're here today. So and you've kind of gotten into my next question, but this, it seems like what you've done is grow your businesses organically. You sort of see a need, somebody comes to you and says, oh, this is great, you did this and this and this, but we need help with this. And you're seeing those opportunities, and that's how you're growing. How much of your growth or your strategy to date has been you sitting down with some grand vision and saying, we're going to capture this market and then this market and then this market, and how much of it was there's a need, I think we can fill it. Let's go do that.
Yeah. I think it's for sure the latter. I did not go to business school. I was like a philosophy major and musician. And so I think it's always sort of happened organically. Like, what's a need? What's a problem that no one is sort of in that area? And I think like there's entrepreneurs watching this. Every single entrepreneur generally thinks I can do that better. And so I think, I don't know if that's arrogance or just the way that we're wired, but just seeing like, hey, there's a need in the market for something different, and I think I can fill that need. And sometimes I get you into trouble, and sometimes like really beautiful things happen from that. And I think most recently, even with 6th Avenue storytelling, I was telling you this morning was there are ad agencies and marketing companies who do beautiful websites and great ad campaigns and can make you a really cool, logo and graphic and all this stuff, or do your Facebook ad buys and all that stuff. But one of the things I kept finding as a business owner was one, I have built all my brands you mentioned on organically on the philosophy that people don't follow and resonate to advertising. They follow and resonate to great stories. And so I'll unpack that a little bit. Actually, I'll unpack it right now. But like really what we learned with Green River Ordinance, my whole philosophy with marketing and driving the band was, if I could create a super fan, someone who would go from just coming to one concert to coming to every single concert and buying every single CD, like those were the fans that we wanted. And what we found was, the more that we invited people into our lives and our story and kind of gave them a peek behind the curtain, the more they felt connected to us, and the more likely they were to become like those super fans, like the ones that felt like they knew me. So instead of saying like, hey, here's a concert, come go to it. Here's our CD, come buy it. The more we said, here's what we're eating for breakfast. Here's my dog. Here's my wife. Here's what we're doing before backstage. The more we told the stories of what we were doing. Here's the message behind the song. Here's how I wrote the song. Here's us writing the song. People felt connected, and so that was literally how we sort of built a tribe. And when we opened Brood, the coffee shop restaurant in 2012, I said, man, I'm going to try to market this thing like a band. And we're not going to do any advertising. So Brood, we never spent like a penny on traditional advertising, and what we did was most businesses and business owners treat social media like advertising, and they get on Instagram and they say, come buy this thing. And so what we did was we said, we're not going to sell things online. So instead of saying, hey, here's a cup of coffee, come buy this cup of coffee, what we said was, here's a cup of coffee and here's where it came from. Or here's a cup of coffee and here's how it makes you feel. Or here's a cup of coffee and here's who poured your cup of coffee and why they're awesome. Or here's a cup of coffee and here's who's drinking that cup of coffee and why they're awesome and why we want to celebrate it. So we just told stories, and we didn't sell anything. And very quickly, Brood grew and had more online social media followers than any restaurant in Fort Worth. And I think it's because we gave people compelling content. And then we did the same thing with the real estate company. When we officially launched 6th Avenue Homes, whereas most real estate companies and agents and businesses in town just say, here's a house, come buy this house, here's a house. We said, what's the story of the house? Who's the person going into the house? Who's working on the house? Here's us. We invited people into our process, and really quickly, like, just it exploded online. And what's interesting is, if you go look at 6th Avenue Homes, one out of every like 3 pictures or 4 pictures is a face. And I'm a big believer in like, people buy people, and businesses with a face have a soul. And so part of our approach was like, man, we don't want to just show houses. People like houses, but we want to show what's the story behind the house and who are the people, to like, who are the people behind the scenes and who are our customers, and making them the hero and the center of what we're doing. So all that said, that's been my approach to marketing. And one of my challenges with that approach as a business owner was, every time I tried to outsource our marketing, most of the ad agencies in town just aren't set up to do ongoing 5-6 days a week, ongoing content. They just don't do that. Again, they do these one-off ad campaigns, or they do big strategy, or they do killer websites, all those things. But nobody wanted to touch our day in, day out, constant content. And if they did, they weren't in with us enough to like really be able to tell the story well. And so I just kept hiring people, or if they did do it, it was really, really expensive. And so we just kept running into this, man, no one wants to do this thing, so I have to take it over. We have to hire an in-house to do it. And so that was really the need we wanted to fulfill here, is we're not competing with the ad agencies. Like, I don't want to touch and build you a big crazy website. But what we are doing is we're helping brands tell their story by giving them constant content and doing social media in a very organic way. Because I think when you build a following organically versus like an ad is like a one-time click, come click this thing. But when you tell a story, people say, okay, I like this brand, it resonates with me. I'm going to choose to follow along with it and invite them into my life. And it's way more meaningful when you do an ask if they organically choose to interact with you. If that makes sense. That was, again, kind of a long answer to your question.
No, I think it's really helpful, and I think what you're bringing up is this concept of storytelling and what that entails and how that works. And so I think where I'm totally on the same page with you, but where we are right now today is the world is completely changed, and for some people it feels like it's a black and white switch, right? And for other people, they're like, is it really that big of a deal? How long is it gonna last? But the bottom line is we will be different after we come out of this process. The businesses will be different. Consumers may be different. And so what I'm seeing a lot of in the entrepreneurial community here is people trying to figure out how does my business need to be different coming out of this? Is there new product lines I need to release? Is there modifications to my current product or service lines? But all of that, no matter what these innovative entrepreneurs are trying to accomplish, is going to involve telling a new story, or clarifying a story, or generating a story, or figuring out how to do that. And part of that is, how do we develop that new story? Part of it is, how do we create and continue to create connection points with our customers during this time when everything's unknown and people aren't making major decisions. So I've got several questions around the art of storytelling, but what are questions that companies and entrepreneurs should be asking themselves right now to determine if and how their story needs to change?
I would say the first thing is just they need to be asking questions in general. I think part of like good storytelling is being relevant and telling the story of actually what's happening. And so what's happening here is like, there's a global pandemic where the economy has sort of crashed. We're in a recession, coming out of a recession, whatever you want to call it. And so if you're not talking about that, like you're not telling your story. Like if you're a business, I guarantee you've either had to struggle or you've pivoted or you've been like, what the heck's going on? Like it has affected your business. So if you're not talking about that, I feel like you're missing the mark. So the other a couple of things. One is as I truly believe that the businesses who have built a following or who have a strong following or who have cultivated and done storytelling well are going to come out of this ahead. I think like if you haven't done that, it's like now's the time you need to start doing that. Like that's the key to success. Like one of the reasons like 6th Avenue Homes has had, this is going to sound bad maybe, but we've had a lot of success in the past 2 months is because we have built this giant following who has bought in and is invested in what we're doing. And so one I said like it's the time to build a following. I think you build followings by telling a compelling story. And two, I think your story has to be relevant. So one of the things, like a couple of things that we said very early on was, when I want to address the elephant in the room every single time. And so what I mean by that is like, this is real. It's affected my life. You're in your home. I'm in my home. Like our lives are affected. And so as we communicate as a business, we need to address the elephant and talk about that has happened. Like things are different. And I think you also just need to pivot. One of the things we did very early on just with 6th Avenue Homes was I was like, we have a construction company. So I had all these construction jobs pulling out and closing down and saying, we're going to cancel it. I was expecting home sales to just completely drop. I was expecting, all right, who's going to do interior design right now? That's a luxury thing. So we were like really anticipating revenue to just go, shoom. And so very quickly, we pivoted our message and we rolled out some new offerings and some discounts. We said for construction, hey, we know money is tight right now, so and we want to pass along savings to you, so we're offering 0% profit construction. So generally, the way construction works is we'll do a job, we charge you for the labor, the materials, and then we add profit onto that. So we said we're going to take away our profit. We're going to pass on some savings to you because one, we want to keep our team members employed, and we know you still want to do your construction job. We want to save you some money. And so we released that. We had a following who we were able to communicate that message to, and we did it by addressing the elephant in the room. We didn't just say, hey, we have a sale. We said, hey, we're doing this discount because you need it. There's empathy. We know money's tight. We know you're scared. We're addressing the elephant in the room. The same thing with real estate. We said, hey, we know you were planning on buying a home this spring and now you're worried. Now you don't know if you can. We're going to do virtual showings. We're going to do virtual meetups. And we're going to give back 25% of all the proceeds of the sale to the nonprofit or small business of your choice. And so we pivoted what we were saying. With our design company, we said, we're going to offer free virtual design consultations. We're going to offer these discounted virtual design sessions, and we had a platform to communicate that to. We changed our message and we addressed the elephant in the room, and we rolled that out like very, very, very quickly. And we've had like 2 of the best months we've ever had. I've had more construction business than I have ever had in the middle of this pandemic, and we're having to hire like a couple contractors on to keep up with it. So I think your message has to look different and what you offer has to look different. You can't be attached, are we coming out of Corona? I think people are getting kind of restless and tired of like the shut in. People are we're gonna come out of this, but I still think even your message now during Corona is gonna look different from your coming out of Corona message. I think a lot of it will be, hey, we're now meeting up. We're still kind of concerned about safety. But at the same time, like money is really tight. And so how can we offer value? How can we do things to still help you in this time? And so I think like you can't, like one of the things like the first week I was like, why is this happening? This is really hard. And had some like internal wrestling and said, man, that's the wrong question. Why is this happening? The right question needs to be, what does this make possible? And what can I do now because this is a reality? And so I think just like that is an important question. Like, what does this make possible? Like, what revenue streams are out there? How can you help people? How can you add value to people? How can you address their problems? And I think just starting with empathy and starting with what is my customer's problem and how can I change what I'm doing to meet that need? I don't know if that's helpful or not.
I think that's great. I think you said several things that sort of stuck with me. The empathy piece is important to recognize that indeed our customer, business connection is actually a relationship, and developing that relationship is something that doesn't stop because COVID hit, right? It doesn't stop because people can't go to their houses. It doesn't stop. And so so it sounds like there's a constantly dynamic story that's being told that you're getting to participate in. And I think the exciting thing here is the idea that not only am I participating in that, but in a lot of ways, entrepreneurs are helping determine and guide and lead what this will look like on the way out. And so as you're looking at, okay, how do we modify the business to support the needs of where our customers are, to support the needs of where we are? How do we keep people employed, which is just a hugely valiant move on your part to really try to focus on the people that work for you and work with you, I think is so helpful too. But this idea of, one of my questions was, how different is your story today than it needs to be 2 months ago? And it sounds like your story could be different 2 months from now, every 2 months, regardless of whether there's a COVID.
Yeah, it should be. I mean, we're already talking about what does our message need to look like in the next couple of weeks, because I think, man, people are tired of hearing, we're on this to get people things are opening up. The economy is going to look different, and so you have to be pivoting with that. I think the other thing, just going back to is having empathy. Is letting, if you said earlier, Trey and I were on a phone call and his daughter started crying and so she got hurt or something, but if that happens and I'm just like, sorry man, that doesn't, but if I say, oh man, that stinks, I know how it is to have a 4-year-old who hits her knee, it's the worst, I hate it when that's empathy. And I think that's humanizing your brand. Business owners are so afraid to put themselves in what they talk about. And they're so afraid to be human. And so I think, man, being empathetic is hey, we know things are tight. We know you're hurting. It's been really hard on us. We have been very vocal and honest. This has been really hard. I have been on Facebook saying this is really hard. One of the hardest things I've been through. And just letting people see behind the curtain. And I think part of it, the people that you know and love, people who know you, love you, and trust you want to help you. And I think that's the same with brands. When I have a brand that I know, love, and trust, and they say, I need help or I'm struggling, or people will show up and buy what you, but you have to be honest, and you have to let people see that you're a human and that your business is a human. And I think put your face out there. I think one of the mistakes a lot of business owners make is they don't put themselves in real estate, there's a ton of real estate companies. But, the main difference between other real estate companies and my company is me. Like I'm like me. I think the difference between what you like the deck and other entrepreneurs like is you and is your people. And so I think just like being human, addressing the elephant, have empathy, like those are all important. I think the other thing that's important too is like that we said is we don't want to treat this as just like a storm or like a flash flood, where when a storm hits, you just kind of like buckle down, you hide under a bridge, you put your umbrella up or whatever, and you just wait it out. We said we're not going to treat it like a storm. We just wait out. We're going to treat it sort of just as like a new season, and and when winter hits, you put on your winter clothes and you go out. You know what I mean? Right. And so I think you've seen a lot of businesses that have just buckled down, and our philosophy is like, man, we're not going to buckle down. I want to go capture market share right now from the people who are just buckling down. Mm-hmm. And that's only going to happen if I'm like out there and I'm vocal and I have a story to tell and we're changing and making our offering relevant.
So what would you say to somebody that maybe doesn't have a rock star background and doesn't necessarily feel comfortable with their face being out there and connecting the brand so directly to themselves? How do you tell a story if that's not your personality?
Yeah, be authentic to you. Like be authentic to who you are. Like you do not have to talk and communicate. But people still want to know who you are.
Sure.
Like I was like a plumber friend of mine. We're doing some marketing stuff for him, and I'm like I guarantee you, most of your customers are your customers because they like know you and love you and trust you. But his face wasn't anyway. It wasn't on the website. But it's like people like, and he's not a rock star. He's a plumber. But people support him because they love him. Like he's an honest, down to earth, good guy. And it's like whatever that looks like, be authentic to you. We're working with a cleaning company right now who's doing some really neat disinfecting stuff that pivoted their message. And they have a big photo shoot today with some neat stuff. And he's like, what do I wear? And I was like, man, you need to wear what is authentic to you. If you don't wear suits to work, don't wear a suit. Because people want to know who the face is behind the brand. And especially like there's such a movement back to local. There's a movement back to supporting small business. And I think like, man, the businesses we love to support are the ones where we know the guy behind them and we love supporting them. I think like in Fort Worth, like John Bonnell has several great restaurants, Waters, Buffalo Brothers. And he, like, people love him because he's out in the community. He's always giving back. He's built a following. And during this time, he like quickly said, we're shutting down our luxury restaurant. We're just going to offer family meals for $40 for 4 people. And he's like been selling out meals every single day. There's a line. It takes an hour-and-a-half line to like get one of his meals. But I think part of it is he's also been on Facebook talking about how hard it's been. He's talking about what he's doing. He's talking about how he's pivoting. He's talking about here's what we're offering. He's been very, 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 very vocal. And there's trust with that. Like you want those guys to win, you know.
Yeah.
You don't have to be vocal, you don't have to be loud. Like, but you still have to like. I still think you have to be vulnerable and put yourself out there on some level. Just it makes it feel human, and that's your story, and your business is your story.
And genuine, right? The idea that people trust who you are, and that that is that you are who you are. So let's talk maybe just technically through this process of storytelling, because you know, as I meet with a lot of entrepreneurs all the time, and I hear them tell their story, sometimes I'm like, I don't like that's not your story. That's components of it. That's elements of it.
Yeah.
That's not your story. So as we think about the technical components of a story, like the intro, the attention getter, the arc, the clincher, those types of things. I mean, do you guys think through it like that? And when you're meeting with clients to say, okay, we've got to go through these 7 steps to determine what your story is, or is it more, we're just going to talk to you and we'll figure it out there?
That's a good question. So I don't know if our approach is as nuanced as like I'm writing a novel and there's an intro and another, you know, all these things. But we do 2 things. One is my philosophy on social media is I want to give people a holistic picture of the brand. So even if I sell ice cream, It's like if I sell ice cream, like the thing people come to us and know us for is like our ice cream. But if I just post pictures of ice cream, like that's a very one side of who you are. And so like with every brand we work with is we develop 5 to 6 categories. And so it would be your product, the ice cream, it would be your faces, your team and your customers. It would be the process, because people love knowing like how things are made. Your mission, people buy your why. They want to know, why do you do what you do? It could be your locations in your store, the neighborhoods you're in. And so part of our approach, like if I want people to emotionally connect with the brand, to follow it, I can't just give them my product. I have to give them the whole picture. And I guarantee you, when I do like a big sexy picture of ice cream, that's going to get way more likes than the picture of like, I don't know, my scooper, my guy, you know, the 16-year-old kid who's handing. But at the same time, like when they know the 16-year-old kid who's handing the ice cream, like they know the bigger picture. And so part of our approach is we have 5 to 6 categories, like these brand pillars is sort of what we call them, and we rotate through them. With 6 Ave Homes, it's again, I mentioned earlier, like you will only see houses like, you know, 1, 2 out of every 4 posts. And we rotate through our team, our customers, our mission, like why we do what we do, houses, and then like the process. And so one, that's one part of it. The second part of it is having, you know, when we talk about storytelling, one, I think you're telling your story. At the second time, you're also telling like your customer's story. And so many businesses come on and they say, you know, I've been in business for 30 years and here's my awards and I'm awesome. Like much of real estate, if you go to their website, it's like, here's why we're so awesome. You open the magazine, it's like, here's why we're so awesome. And it's like, as customers, we like immediately tune out of that. You think about yourself. I think about myself. I want to know what's in this for me. And so I think part of the story element too is telling our story, but also like putting your customer at the center of that story. And so I think that goes back to like some of the elements that we have in every post is one, empathy. Like, what's the problem that we're solving? Like, what's the problem? What's our authority to solve it? Like, the problem is you're not sure if you can do construction during this time because you don't know if it's safe. The problem is you don't know if you have enough money to do construction right now because money's tight. The problem is you don't know where to start. You don't know if you can trust contractor. Our authority is, hey, we're still doing projects. We're still keeping it safe. We've renovated thousands of houses. We have a great team, and we're going to pass on. And then empathy, authority, and then what's your solution? And so our solution is X, Y, and Z. And so almost every approach we do, I want it to lead with some sort of hook, have a problem that we're addressing. Like, we're saying, we understand you have a problem. Here's our authority, why we can solve that, and here's our plan to help you solve that. And so I think like if I say, hey Trey, if we meet at a party and you say, what do you do? And I say I have a marketing company, like that doesn't speak anything to you. But if we meet at a party and say, hey, what do you do? And I said, you know, have you ever found that like most business owners have a really hard time, like, one, having the time to do their marketing, or two, like finding an ad agency or marketing company that gets them? My company solves that. Like, if I give you a problem and I talk about the problem, I invite you into a story and I like immediately make it way more interesting. And so I think instead of just saying, here's a house, here's an ice cream cone, here's a cup of coffee, you know, we know you've been stuck at home and you have a sweet tooth, and that's why our pints we'll deliver them right to your door. Or we know you've been stuck at home and your kids are driving you crazy. You're tired of cooking. You know, that's why we have made these to-go kits, and you can pick them up curbside. It's, you know, we know you're concerned about the safety of what, but just like, what's the problem? How are we being empathetic to that problem? What's our authority to solve it? And then what's our solution? I think that is like, if you don't have a problem, there's no story.
Right.
Like if I said, hey, I saw my daughter today and she said hi to me, like, there's no like. But if I said, hey, I saw my daughter today and she was crying and had a blood on her arm, and like, you immediately like, what'd you do? What happened? You know, like, what's the problem?
And I think that the part of this that makes so much sense is that I'm hearing the same things that you're saying that work for your construction business or your home business or your marketing company or your band. I mean, this idea that, you know, X number of years ago, you guys came in and early on said, look, rather than putting on a performance, let's create an experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That experience invites somebody in to participate and be a part of it, as opposed to, I'm going to deliver something to you. You can consume it or not consume it. And you're either going to like it or you're not going to like it. But it's a transaction versus a relationship. So I think that for the people that are watching to understand, like Jamey's proven this not in just one business. It's not just, well, gosh, if this formula works in construction but won't work in renovation. It works in marketing but won't work in music. I think what we're seeing here is something that continues to prove itself to be true over and over and over, whatever businesses you may.
Yeah, whether it's retail, whether it's, like the event space, like the event space that we own the building. We don't run the event space, but we were part of like the early launching of it and sort of adopted the same approach. Let's tell the story of the people having the events, not just saying come to an event, like
right.
out like two years in advance, And I think, like, man, look at what musicians, your favorite musician right now, is doing. I think, like, I don't know if you follow Drew and Ellie Holcomb. Or Ben Rector, like, but like Ben Rector has been going to this. He's been, like, every day going to this empty house and playing songs just on his, like, he's like, I have this empty house that we're trying to sell, but then COVID hit, and so it's just sitting here. So he's like, or Drew and Ellie Holcomb are just inviting. They're doing covers in their kitchen, and it just makes them feel so much more human. Mm-hmm. And, like, honestly, I love them more post-COVID than I did before, because they've invited me into their kitchen, and I've seen, like, they're just, like, it humanized them. I was on a like a live stream the other day with Josh Weathers, who's like a DFW musician, and it was just him in his barn. It was like 2 hours, and it was like so fun. He like has kitchen, like, chickens in the corner, and like picked up the phone and like went over and like started playing with these. Like, it humanizes. It makes you feel more endeared to the artist, and the artists they're giving you a lot right now for free. And so I think, can you give value to your clients? Is there something you can offer them that's free, that's helpful, that shows your empathy?
So that's I think that's great. You've done a great job of taking us through what we should be doing and how we should be empathizing and how we should be connecting that and developing that relationship. Are there some obstacles that you see in the storytelling process that you would say, make sure you don't do this, or this, or make sure you don't allow this to be an obstacle? Because if you do that, it's gonna either not allow you to genuinely tell a story, or hurt the way people interpret the story you're trying to tell.
Yeah, I would say one obstacle is you have to show up. I feel like a lot of business owners get so caught up in like having the perfect post, or having like the right post, or like the right picture, like that they don't post. They post like once a week instead of like 4 or 5 times a week. And so I think consistency is king, and content is king, and it's better to show up with like okay stuff, as long as you're like, than to just show up like once or twice every couple weeks. So I would say that obstacle. I think an obstacle to that is like time. Part of the struggle of like being a business owner is like you're so caught up in what you're doing, you have a hard time finding the time to market, which I think like is one of the reasons we're offering what we're doing. And then two, just being relevant. I think you have to. Ideally, it's with like great photography and consistent photography that looks really good. But even if it's just your iPhone, just showing up, I still think it's half the battle. And it's organic, so that happens slowly. But the more you show up, the more that grows. So I would say that's an obstacle. I think having the right language is really important. Like knowing what is your message and can you communicate it. I'm also a big believer in like part of telling a story is telling why you do what you do and what's your mission, what's the reason, what's the bigger picture. As soon as like you as an entrepreneur start telling me why you started what you do and like the bigger picture behind it, I immediately, my heart goes out and I'm like, it endears people to the brand. And I think another challenge is a lot of times business owners can't articulate their why, and can't articulate it in a very simple, clear way. I also think like business owners sometimes like on their websites will just say too much. I think like, simple, if you can, simple is always better. And just what is your message? Can you say it in a very simple, clear, concise way that invites people into a story?
And what channels do you utilize to tell these stories? I mean, is it email? Is it social? Is it video? Is it tangible, like a flyer or a disc or a whatever it may be? Once you determine what your story is and you finalize that, how do you distribute that? How do you make sure that gets out there, and how do you make sure it becomes, from building awareness of the brand to building, loyalty and then retention? Are there specific avenues that you guys take your customers through?
Yeah. So the primary thing that we do at 6th Avenue Storytelling is we help manage your Facebook, your Instagram, your LinkedIn, and then your email platforms. Well, we do a little bit of website stuff, but not a ton of that. And before I get into that, like I also like advertising has its place and is successful. Like the Google ad buys and all those things like that. Like I have a friend who has an RV business, and the majority of what he does is like Google AdWords selling his RVs online, and like that's a very effective strategy. Like I have a friend that has a lawn mowing business, and he does a ton of like mailers where and so I don't want to discredit those things, but I also think like having a strong following on your socials helps the puzzle. And so ultimately, one, I want people to follow along, but two, I also want to like send them somewhere and have a call to action. So I said earlier, like we don't sell the cup of coffee, but you do want to have call to actions. And so, one of the things we do like at 6th Avenue Storytelling is we have created like some free resources. Like I've literally taken my whole entire philosophy of marketing and put it in like a 20-page PDF. We also said, here's our whole marketing strategy during COVID. And I put it in a PDF, and they're free on 6avenuestorytelling.com. And so one, I think it adds value. Like I'm literally telling you, here's how I do what I do. I'm going to give you my secrets. But I have that, like the way you download that is you type in your email address. So my social media is giving people content. It's inviting them to the story. It's endearing them to the brand. It's getting them used to what we're doing. And then I also say, hey, go download this free thing. Like I want to give you something. You have a problem. You don't know how to market your business. Let me teach you how to do that. So I'm sending them to a funnel. Then they get this free resource, and in like a couple of weeks since we've done that, I've had like hundreds of people that have downloaded that. And now I have email addresses, and I now can communicate to those people. I think the challenge is like it's very easy if I abuse those email addresses. Like as soon as I start going and saying, come buy this, they're immediately going to go unsubscribe, spam in my face. And so I think like once you have those email addresses, make your ask meaningful and also continue to add value. And so I would say like any business, whatever, whether you're a lawn company or an RV company, like what is a free just value, what thing that you can offer someone in exchange for email. And I think like I guarantee you I could think of something like for almost every business that there is. And so I think just having you kind of got to have it in multiple places. I think like having a strong social media presence is really important. I think building your email database is probably more important than your social media followers, because they're like lifetime, like Facebook and Instagram filter stuff, so it can be hard to get in front of eyeballs. But I think utilizing all those, and I think your social media is a tool to send people to your website. And if you can get people to your website, you really need to make sure you capture their information. And you're not going to capture their information if just on your website it says subscribe to our newsletter. No one wants to subscribe to your newsletter. But if there's an exchange, if there's a value exchange, I'm going to give you this thing, I'm going to give you this resource, then people are like willing and glad to do that.
I think that's good to think about the fact that there is a marketing mix, and advertising does play a role in that. Yeah. But the genuineness in which you communicate and share, and build that and establish that relationship is always going to be an important piece, and that's where it's really like the difference between we did a focus group once with a bunch of kids, and basically we were asking them some questions around, what do you think of online advertising? And they were like, we hate online advertising. We think it's horrible. We would never click on an ad online. Our generation hates this, so forth and so on. And so I sort of stopped and went into the focus group, which you're not allowed to do. And I said, let's take a break, guys. Let's settle down. I said, have you guys seen the new, this is a while ago. I said, have you guys seen the new Batman trailer on YouTube? And they're like, yes, that's awesome. This is the coolest thing I've ever seen. I sent it to all my friends. I did all this stuff. And I said, what they didn't realize was that was 100% an ad, right? It was relevant and it was compelling content. And to them, it wasn't shoving it down their throat. It was inviting them to participate, to engage, to share. And people want to kind of play that role. And so as you're doing the storytelling process, same thing. how does this play into the overall marketing mix? But what I hear you saying is whether you're putting ads online or you're taking pictures of your employees or whatever you're doing, it's got to be authentic, or people, at least your generation, doesn't really resonate with them.
It has to be authentic. It has to invite them into a story. You know, I think like a brand that I like, and I'm a sucker for the occasional. There's a good Instagram ad, there's bad Instagram ads. And one of my favorite ones was a company called Wilcox Boots. And they paid ads showed up in my newsfeed, and I normally just swipe, get rid of it. But they started off the video saying, the problem with most boots is either they look really cool and they're not comfortable, or they're really comfortable, but they don't look cool at all. And I was like, that's right. Like that, like it was my problem. Like I like cool looking boots, but cool looking boots are not comfortable. And they said, but we realized that we felt that problem. So we solved it with these really cool looking boots that are really comfortable. And I bought like 3 pairs of boots. I bought one, but it wasn't like, here's our boot, it's $50, buy it now. It's like, that would have made me immediately scroll past. But they said, what's a problem? The customer, like, what is your problem? Your problem is you keep trying to buy boots and they're not comfortable, or you keep buying comfortable boots and they look really ugly. And so, I think if you do ads in a more storytelling way, and if you do it with content that feels real, doesn't feel corporate-y, that feels authentic to whatever the brand is, I think like it's way more impactful.
So you got to my next question as well, which is, I was like, give us some examples of companies you think that tell stories well. The boot company is one of them. Are there other ones that you look at and you said these guys have just figured it out? And some of the bands you talked about, whether it's Ben or Drew and Ellie, or they're inviting you in to participate. Are there brands that you look at and you're like, that's awesome?
Yeah, I mean, I like, I think as consumers, we don't, unless we have like an emotional connection or attachment to the brand, we rarely will like follow it. But there's some brands I follow. Like I love Patagonia. I think the content is really cool. It's all this like out, they're not, Patagonia is, and Filson. Filson is another brand that just has like really cool content. And very rarely is it like selling me anything. It's just like these rad outdoor nature things with their like clothing in it. And here, like with Patagonia, like hearing, dude, I can't even say that guy's name. Yvon Chouinard, the founder of Patagonia Story. Right. Yeah. It's so cool. Like one of my favorite entrepreneur quotes comes from him. He's like, entrepreneurs are a lot like juvenile delinquents, and they both say, I want to do things my way. I don't care what anybody else thinks. But anyway, I think those are 2 brands that I like personally follow, just because I think the content is really, really, really cool. I'm trying to think Joe T. Garcia's one of my favorite Fort Worth restaurants right now. It's owned by a family. We're friends with them, and they have done a really, really good job during COVID of just putting the family out there and then talking about it and saying, we're here from you, and like talking about, they've done a really good job of pivoting and then trying to address the customer's need and just giving content, but with faces and that feels human during this, and offering their margaritas to go. Like, we know you can't have it at home, but I think that's a brand in Fort Worth that has like done a really good job. I mean, I think there's a ton. I think like there's a lot of musicians that do that.
That's great. And I think you also make a good point, which is, there may be a brand that to you tells a great story, but to me, I don't get it. Right. Yeah. And so that's the relational piece. So we've got about 10 minutes left. I want to make sure we get to a couple of questions that asked. We have some excited, avid Fort Worth supporters on this call. So I want to make sure we get to them. But first, Craig Smith asked, is there a difference between telling a story and telling the truth? I think in terms of like, I want to put the best possible, image of I want to be authentic and I want to be real, but I want to look cool. Right. I want to think I'm awesome and that I'm successful and that they should work with me. And
I mean, there's strategy to it. Like if I'm going to tell you the story about like Trey, last night I had this bottle of wine and I made the best steak ever. And here's how I made my steak. I use this cast iron skillet. And I start talking about the socks that I put on. It's like, you don't care about that. And I think that like there's a lot of things like behind the scenes in as a business owner, like that people don't care about. Like you don't need to put that in your story. And I think like great storytellers are good at like telling the truth, but telling it in a compelling way. And so, I don't think you have to share everything, because like what socks I have on like is irrelevant and nobody cares about. And so knowing the filter, like, am I lying by not sharing you the whole truth? No, but I think it's like being truthful. I think you can, I don't know if that answers it or not.
Yeah. Greg, does that answer what you were asking?
Or if you want to get more specific, let's go.
Yeah. So that's good. There you go. You came back. You were off my video for a little bit.
Oh, I was? Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. It was probably something with the constant intake of broadband that we're all eating up. So there are a couple questions similarly related to talking about Fort Worth in general. I've since I've been involved in entrepreneurship in North Texas, I see a lot of really cool stuff coming out of Fort Worth. In fact, the management company that managed Green River in the beginning started out of the Tech Fort Worth building. Red Sanders was next door with his Red Productions, and now he's doing amazing stuff in Fort Worth as well. But
and I would say, and he has done a great job during this. He said we're going to open up our studio and let people use our studio. They went around and said, hey, we know small businesses are struggling. We're going to offer, if you do a 2-minute video of you talking about what you're offering, we'll edit it and we'll put music to it and make it really cool. We'll give you that for free. And so I think he's done a good job of like, man, we know businesses are struggling. How can we help them and add value for free in this season?
Well, as we look at Fort Worth, which I think is just it's a hub for lots of amazing entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial activity. What are one or two things that qualities of Fort Worth, or Funky Town, as Marco refers to it, that makes it attractive to entrepreneurs? And what type of entrepreneurs do you think can really thrive in Fort Worth?
That's a good question. It's just a friendly place. Like I feel like there's a lot of, one of my personal core values is that I believe in collaboration over competition, and I would say that's a value that's pretty like widely held here. Like people are very collaborative. There's enough business for me. There's enough business for you. I can be excited if you win. I think there's a lot of that. At the same time, like the neat thing about Fort Worth is like, man, I am a long-haired, tattooed ex-musician who has like, I still have a seat at the table. You know what I mean? Like I have had a seat at the table. I've gotten to be a part of really, really neat things, and I have like been embraced and welcomed. And so I think, that is in a town that you probably traditionally think is like more, good old boy Western, like someone like me still has a seat at the table. And I think as a whole, it's a very like accepting place. We love supporting our local entrepreneurs, and there's a lot of camaraderie, I think, sort of in that community, which I know there is in Dallas too. But and maybe that's just like the new world of entrepreneurship is it's a lot more collaborative. And I think the deck and things like what you guys do have helped foster that. And so that's the biggest thing. It's a very warm, it's a little slower pace of life. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think that it is unique in so many ways, and has such its own great story to tell. That I know being from Dallas, I love coming to Fort Worth because I think it's the character the city has, and the opportunity to connect with some of the entrepreneurs I have over there has just been a really exciting thing. And you've got great universities and great restaurants and great amenities and things to do. So I think what I hope through this collaborative nature of what we're seeing sort of in the world today, and especially during COVID, that we'll start to see more interactions between the fact that the distance between Fort Worth and Dallas is like 30 minutes. It's not 2 hours. It's not surmountable. It's so close. It's so there, and building up those connection points are so important, and making sure that we're supporting the amazing things you guys are doing over there, and telling the stories of your entrepreneurs and vice versa. One of the other questions was, what are the qualities you see of successful businesses in Fort Worth that don't necessarily resonate in Dallas? Are there certain brands or entrepreneurs? I mean, you mentioned Brood is in Bishop Arts. So clearly that brand is resonating in both places and at DFW Airport. Are there brands and entrepreneurs that that are building in Fort Worth that aren't resonating in Dallas as much, or where there's just a unique position for Fort Worth to have its own move?
I think you will always have some of that because I think people want something authentic. And I feel like if I came into the real estate world like that, does it feel authentic? Like to their, and I think like if you're a multi-location brand, like how do you make it authentic to like the neighborhood that you're in, and you're not just dropping in your exact same, like in the same way you have to pivot your message now, you have to pivot your message based on where you're at. And I think, and there's different part, like just thinking of real estate, I think that a lot of like Dallas pricing and everything is a lot higher end than a lot of Fort Worth pricing. And I joke a lot, like in Fort Worth, there's a neighborhood called Mira Vista, like big fancy mansions and stuff. And it's like, if you're buying a home in Mira Vista, you're probably not going to call 670 Homes. Like you're just right. Not. Like that's not who you think of. And so I think, like there are brands in Fort Worth that probably just don't make sense in certain parts of Dallas. And there's certain, like if the Dallas brand came here, and at the same time, I feel like if you're authentic and relatable and tell a compelling story to whatever neighborhood you're in, like then it can work. I don't think there's like a hard line there. But I also think like knowing your audience and knowing like you are not for everybody. Like one of the things that drives me crazy is like when business owners are like, we're for everybody. And it's like, you're not. Like you don't want to be for everybody. If you're for everybody, you're boring and like don't have a meaning, don't have a purpose. Like who is your demographic and who are you like trying to reach? Like that smallest number, like that's who you want to target and communicate to. Right. You don't want to be for everybody.
That's good. I think that's great. One last question. We got about 3 minutes left. Craig expanded on his question before and said, what's the difference between a business and a brand?
I think a business is what you do. It's what you make. And I think a brand is sort of like that public perception. And I like, people don't buy great products. People don't buy great businesses. People buy great brands. And the example I use a lot is like iPhone. Trey, do you have an iPhone?
I do. You
have an iPhone. There are like stronger, faster, more megapixels. There are cheaper. There are better phones out there than the iPhone. But like the reason I have the iPhone is because I have bought into the brand, and it like says something about me that I have an iPhone. And so I mean, I think that is, people buy great brands. They don't buy great products. And a lot of times people don't buy the best product. They buy the product that tells the best story.
Right.
So I think there's a difference. Just having a great product doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's good. Well, sort of in closing, I want to talk a little bit about some of the resources that are being made available through the DEC network and organizations across the region. During this time of COVID, we have a one-stop shop website called letsgrownorthtexasbusiness.com, where you can come and find, get access to what sort of funding mechanisms are out there, what sort of online events and programs, things like Fridays are for Founders. You can connect in with some of the stories that are out there that are really trying to help develop and support small businesses and entrepreneurs during this time. And second of all, we have something called the Fast Start Mentor Program. There's a lot of great mentor programs across the region, so find one that's good for you. The one that the DEC network created is directly connecting entrepreneurs and small business owners with coaches, mentors, subject matter experts, exited entrepreneurs that are there to help look at your business and give you an outside perspective of both strategic and tactical plan on A, how to get through this, and then B, how to change your business and exit coming out of this. So I'll put those resources up on the chat bot, but there's lots of resources from a lot of great organizations out there. So please let us know how we can support the entrepreneurs. A special thank you to Jamey Ice for coming in and sharing some of your secret sauce and some of your experience. I think this is just really, really important for businesses and entrepreneurs as they're trying to figure out, what do I do now and where do I go? Starting with the story, understanding your story, being authentic, having empathy, and telling that story in the right ways is going to be really important. So thank you again. Thank you for representing Fort Worth and all of North Texas so well as an amazing entrepreneur. It's great to see you, and we'll enjoy watching your career as it continues to grow. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, what website would you send them to?
You can go to THAVE.com. So 65.com, and that'll take you to like our different stuff we do. Or find me on my last name's Ice. I'm easy to find. Find me on LinkedIn or Facebook or any of that stuff.
Wonderful. All right. Well, and thank all of you for joining us today. We hope to see you next week on Fridays or for Founders.
Sweet.